first thing I want to talk about before we get into the rankings, Brooke, let me ask you this. Is Clemson a top 25 team?
I believe by the end of the year they will be. Right now, just Duke was a good team. Florida State, like really, I mean, as big as I am on Florida State, it felt like Clemson did all they could to lose that game, missing that 29-yard field goal with a minute left. They had Florida State on the ropes, and they just couldn't finish it off. And then obviously the fumble return for 6 was a huge momentum play for Florida State. But I think Dabo will have them ranked by the end of the year.
Yeah, and that Clemson game drove me crazy because their kicker, they just pulled off of Wall Street last week. He was in New York this time last week, getting ready to start a financial job up there. Then Dabo calls them up. And then that whole last drive in regulation, they're playing for the field goal. All they're trying to do is eat clock so they can kick a field goal, which is fine if you have like Justin Tucker or even a competent kicker. But with, a newbie who hasn't even put on pads until that day, to put that kind of a game on him, it's crazy to me that you're not going into that drive thinking we have to score a touchdown. Yeah. Even if, we give Florida State the ball with time left, we can't rely on a field goal here.
I think you're right there. I would have done everything in my power to not have to rely on the field goal at the end of the game there. But at the same time, if you felt confident enough to start him in a Power 5 game, like I feel you have to be able to make a 29-yard field goal. So
I agree, but and it's just
it's a tough spot. He should make it, but like you said, he shouldn't have been in that situation.
Yeah, and I get that, like, and he made I think even a longer field goal earlier in the game. Yeah. So it's not like you feel horrible if he has to go out there, but it's just crazy to me that was clearly the game plan there. Like, let's just eat up all the clock that we can, and then hopefully this guy makes it. Because I mean, their defense had been playing well late, and even that last drive when Florida State had the ball, they stopped him on 4th down. Almost seemed like they had another opportunity to go down there, but overall, that was my big question as far as rankings go. Because like you guys have known, I have had Florida State my number one team the last couple of weeks, but now it's 2 games in a row where they lose to, or they don't lose, they barely beat unranked teams, and so that's kind of where I'll start here with these rankings once I pull them up here. Brooke hasn't changed. Still Florida State number 1 for him. Tyler hasn't changed. Florida State not to be seen.
Well, dude, I mean, it's tough because if they just win any of those 2 games convincingly, I think they break into my top 10. But
sure,
unfortunately, Florida State's just kind of dropping the ball the last couple of weeks.
I mean, it's really showing here the last 2 or 3 weeks, especially, that Tyler doesn't know ball. But I mean, it's criminal after this week. They're going to go undefeated. If I'll go as far as to say, if Florida State wins the national championship, Tyler might have to block my number. I will be in his ear about that so bad.
That is the one thing that I agree. There's no one on their schedule that, and until maybe the ACC championship game and then the playoff, but regular season, unless they really drop the ball, which I can't imagine that they'll drop the ball that bad. Because they don't even, I mean, I guess Miami's looking pretty okay. Yeah. But other than that, they did it. They won all the hard games that they needed to.
Yeah, Miami, North Carolina, and now Louisville's 4-0.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's going to be a dogfight to see who gets in there.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, Duke's still a good team as well.
Oh, so yeah. Shoot, I forgot about them too. Jeez. Yeah.
But Florida State's a double-digit favorite against any of those teams. Another big riser in our rankings this week, Washington State. Big win over Oregon State, who I know Tyler was very high on going into the last couple of weeks. But, man, I mean, all the way up to 8, that seems a bit steep.
I am absolutely shocked that a team Tyler was high on lost. Absolutely dumbfounded. Dumbfounded.
Listen. They ran into a buzzsaw in Washington State. Washington State looks like an incredible team. Brooke and I are both on that train here. But no BS. I really considered putting Florida State in there because I do think that they are a good team. But I was looking at Utah and what they've been able to accomplish over the first 4 weeks without their starting quarterback.
Crazy.
I just think that they've looked a lot better over the first 4 weeks than Florida State has. I mean, obviously you give them that week 1 win over LSU, which does look like a pretty good team, turns out. I don't know. Just I like to give the smaller schools a little bit of a chance here in the top 10.
Brooke, let me ask you this. If you knew that Washington State was going to be on Tyler's top 10, would you have put them in yours?
Yeah, just because I'm a big fan of their quarterback, Cam Ward. Obviously, I don't know. We kind of turned the game off, so I wasn't really in tune with what happened and how that game got so close there at the end. But they were up 14, 21 points there halfway through the third. And I don't know. I wouldn't say DJ played bad. It took him too long to get going, and it was just too little too late for him. But that offense is really explosive. It might be up there with USC, the way they can put points on the board in a hurry.
Yeah, and it just looks like they're just it doesn't feel like, the Mike Leach Washington State teams who were just airing it out and kind of hoping on those big plays, but it just seems like everything's like a well-oiled machine there. And that's what I noticed while watching the Wisconsin game too, is like this doesn't look like a team that's just going to come up and bite you in the ankle. It looks like the team that can go toe-to-toe with anybody in that conference and look like that they're playing the same sport, which, you even saw Colorado, who wildly talented team. Yeah, they can't stay on the same field with everybody.
No. And we knew it was coming with Colorado. It was just a matter of time. And especially with Travis Hunter being out, it was nice to see them eat a little bit of humble pie there and get brought back down to earth.
Is there a bigger hater in college football than Dan Lanning right now? I mean, he first team All-American hater for me, and I love it.
I love the comments before the game, and then it felt like it was a bit of a classy move for him to not take shots after they absolutely want them. But if like Dion says, if you can walk the walk, then go ahead and talk the talk. And that's what Dan Lanning did. He called a shot.
No kidding. They were playing for clicks. We're playing for wins. I mean, that line goes hard as hell.
That's crazy. I would have been juiced up if I was in that locker room.
And you can tell that they were. I mean, that whole game was just the whole time. And that's, there's levels to it. You can be a good team. You can be talented. But when you meet a team that's genuinely wanting to compete for a national championship, it's a different sport.
And Bo Nix has kind of been flying under the radar. Can he finally get over the hump and win the big one?
Looks great.
Right now, yeah.
It looks great. But one last thing I wanted to get to before we wrap up this episode here. So we're officially a third of the way through the season. And so I kind of just wanted to go through and look where our predictions are as far as where we're at. And none of us in great shape. Tyler and I had Nebraska 4-0 at this point. Brooke predicted the Minnesota loss, the only one to do that. And then even honest Abe couldn't get the Northern Illinois or he's what was that, 1 for 4? So he's not doing great right now. But if I were to, go back in time and talk you guys through how the first 4 games would go out, how would you be feeling? Would you be okay with the 2-2 record with how things have played out?
I'm not thrilled about it, but it's not worst case scenario, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, going into it, everybody thought Colorado was going to be bad. Turns out they're not. So if you went into the season and they were this team last year, then you're okay. Well, you're never going to be okay as a Nebraska fan losing to Colorado, but you can swallow that one a little bit easier. But the one against Minnesota, that's one that you could have won, you should have won. And then, as I pointed out at the start of the season, like the Northern Illinois, Louisiana Tech games, those are ones you have to win. and thankfully we were able to accomplish that. So yeah, we're in a good spot right now.
Yeah, I think if you had just told me the destination, I'd be okay. But seeing how we've gotten here has been disappointing, and just seeing how poorly Jeff Sims has played. You kind of hope that if we lose to Minnesota and we lose to Colorado, it's because they are just a better, more developed team at this point. Where it kind of felt like those two games where we gave it away and they just took advantage of that. Where we've seen plenty of that with the previous regime. So, but overall, I think everything that we realistically wanted to accomplish is still on the table here.
I will say, at knowing what we know now, the 4-game stretch of Illinois, Northwestern, Purdue, and Michigan State, I feel so much better about. Those are games in my mind we should win, and we absolutely could win.
I'm still up in the air about Illinois because I feel like they are still a good team. They're just not playing well right now. So I think by the time we get to Illinois, they might look a little better in 2 weeks. But I agree with what Brooke said. Everything else on the schedule does look a lot more winnable. Even Wisconsin. I mean, they look like they're starting to kind of turn the corner into being the team that everybody thought they were going to be. But I still think, as of right now, that is a winnable game. If we were to play them, this week, I think we would be able to put up a fight. Maryland, I might switch on that just because they do look a lot better than I thought they were going to be. But
at
like I
some
keep
point,
saying,
with Illinois, they almost got beat by Toledo. They almost got beat by FAU. At some point, you are what you are.
yeah.
Obviously, Wisconsin's rounding into form, but will Illinois ever round into form this year is the big question.
If they do, just based on historic trends, I would imagine that it would be Nebraska where they turn into a juggernaut.
Yeah, absolutely. They
But I'll
find their
say
stride against us.
absolutely. But yeah, the Illinois game is a big one for me, just mostly because it's a Friday night primetime game. The whole country is going to be watching us again, just like they were for the Minnesota game, just like they were for Northwestern last year. This is such a prime opportunity for Matt Rule to kind of turn a corner that the previous regime never did, as far as being the being on the big stage of college football and not being an embarrassment. Because it was embarrassing when we lost to Minnesota. It was embarrassing when we lost to Northwestern. Every big noon college game day kickoff game that we've had the last 2 years has been embarrassing. This feels like a great opportunity to go into someone else's house, pick up a win, look good while doing it, and then kind of get rid of this icky narrative that Nebraska football has had over the last 7 years or so.
Absolutely. And the other thing about that Illinois game is, just to play devil's advocate, say we lose to Michigan, being 3-3 after the Illinois game would feel miles better than being 2-4. So
yeah, that's right.
Just for the fact of trying to get to 6 wins, it feels like a big game, because it almost feels like stealing if we win that one.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at with that.
I think that's a good place to be. So one final thing that I wanted to do is I'll open up the board here. So if there are any changes that you'd like to make, this is the time to do it. Italicize it to make it known that this was after the season started change, so you don't get full credit for it like you did if you're going to stick with the preseason predictions. But are there any games that you'd like to flip on?
The only one would be Illinois to me, because I think we still do lose to Maryland and Wisconsin. Yeah, I think that right now that's the only one I would.
Tyler, anything that you like to flip flop from?
Yeah, I still don't feel like, I think we will beat Illinois, but I still don't feel great about it. So the one that I would change is the Michigan State game. I think we will win that game, as obviously events have unfolded for them this season.
Yeah, I definitely like to flip that game as well. They And I don't know, this November 4th is a long time away, so maybe they get their footing between now and then. But it really does feel like they don't have their feet underneath them. Um, and rightly so. I mean, what they've had to kind of overcome over the last couple of weeks is very fair. And I'll also change the Wisconsin game. It felt very ambitious at the time, picking Nebraska to pick up the win over Wisconsin. But even though Wisconsin struggled as of late, I think that's a tough game to go into Camp Randall and win.